On the lines then with Stephen Carr, and today's host is Butler County PA State Committeeman, also the National COS Convention of States for the state of Pennsylvania leader. Me and Chet go back to Convention of States a few years back, and as I was the district captain for that, for my legislative district. So today we're going to be talking about, we're going to be having a discussion about the PA primary, general, and primary, the candidates, and the of becoming a state committeeman or a county committee person, because that's where the rubber meets the road. It's one of the most important positions, first of all, and we'll get to that. But Chet, you've been an advocate support. What's your opinion on the PA primary as of right now?
The PA primary, and I presume you're talking about the governor and lieutenant governor's primary?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that the PA GOP did a good job in selecting Stacey Garrity, who's currently the treasurer. Stacey, in her last run, I believe that she recorded more votes than anyone ever has for one of those major offices. So, she's definitely well known. She has definitely done a good job as the treasurer. And I think that pairing her up with her lieutenant governor's candidate that she did is very good. Jason is a very high-powered lawyer in Pittsburgh. He has a lot of contacts. Throughout his lifetime, he has demonstrated he just has a record of achievement. So I think that particular team is very strong. We could talk about some of the other dynamics of the 2026 primary and general election if you like. So, like right now.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So my biggest concern that I have about 2026 involves Republican engagement in the election. We've had a problem lately where there are a lot of Republicans. We went and registered a ton of Republicans. We're at the point where we're almost on parity statewide with the Democrats. In terms of the number of registrations, I think we're just a few tens of thousands short of them now. So that's pretty close. We have a problem where a lot of people on the Republican side seem to not want to engage, and there's various reasons for that. I think Republicans are more likely to be tuned into some of the things that have happened on the election integrity front. And there's a certain percentage of them that just think that their vote doesn't count, and they sit things out. There's some of them that don't think that the party pays attention to them. They don't think that they have a voice with the party, and so that turns them off. And so there's like 3 or 4 factors like that make a lot of people want to sit it out, and that's a danger because the other side, the Democrats, are highly engaged. I think that they are driven by TDS inducement, and they're getting out there. And in the last election, they voted in droves, and they are enthusiastic, energized, and they can taste blood. We're in a situation now in Pennsylvania where we are down 1 seat in the House, and if we don't get out and get a lot of people out to vote on the Republican side, we're going to lose more seats. The situation in the Senate is we have a 2-seat advantage. Once again, it's conceivable that if people do not show up, we could lose seats in the Senate, and we only need to lose 2 to where we're in the minority. And then finally, we've got these good, strong candidates going up against Josh Shapiro. Josh is funded by out-of-state money to the tune of $30 million and counting, and his base is energized around him. And so, if we don't get out and vote, we're not going to compete with him. And consequently, we could end up in the same type of a situation that Virginia found itself in, where the voters became apathetic on the Republican side. They did not show up to the polls last cycle, and they ended up having a trifecta pulled on them by the Democrats. The Democrats now control both chambers in Virginia, and they control the governorship. And the Democrats were just waiting for that minute because they have a lot of very bad legislation. They had a lot of very bad legislation queued up and ready to go. And as soon as they got everyone seated in office, you started seeing the anti-gun bills come out. You started seeing the tax increases. You started seeing the woke agenda getting expanded and just a bunch of other bad stuff. And so right about now, conservatives in Virginia who sat out that election are kicking themselves in the seat of pants and wishing they could get in a time machine and travel back and go and cast their votes. And if we don't wake up in Pennsylvania, the same thing is going to happen here. So I think the biggest takeaway on anything is our number one issue is that Republicans need to engage. You may not like a candidate that's on that you have, but I guarantee you that candidate, the Republican candidate, is going to do much better by you than any Democrat would in that situation. So anyway, that's my 30,000-foot assessment of it. Any questions, Steve, or do you have anything to add to that?
So there has been a write-in campaign endorsement for Doug Mastriano, and that seems to be the competition here for, I say very loosely competition, because Stacey Garrity already has 30-some thousand petitions filed, and her name's on the ballot, which gives her leverage at this point. The thing that gets me is that at this point with the write-in campaign, they're not going to receive. To me, I don't think they're going to receive that many votes, let alone momentum in this uphill battle against the GOP machine for Stacey Garrity.
You're absolutely right. But you're absolutely right, Steve, in that write-in campaigns at any level.
It is going to weaken the fundraising. It's going to weaken the fundraising. It's going to weaken the votes in the primary against Stacey Garrity, and it's selfish. It's self-centered, and it's splitting the party. It's division against two. No, I get it. They don't want the establishment candidate. They don't want the GOP endorsement person. But we either in this together, and we're going to lose the state of Pennsylvania, and everything that goes with it, all the seats in the chambers, in the bilateral chambers, and we go down like California. And that's one thing, like you said, it's the one thing that the Democrats are good at, sticking together. It doesn't matter if it's legislation in the House. It doesn't matter if it is campaigning for a person. They stick together no matter what, and we fall apart, and then we blame each other for it at the end.
You're spot on all points. So first off, at any level, it's extremely difficult to win a write-in campaign. And I'm talking about even smaller offices, with the exception of a precinct, where you only need 10 votes and hardly anybody runs for that. But if you go down to like a rep, like the state rep level, or if you go down to the county row office level, even with those smaller numbers, it's virtually, even at the school district, it's virtually impossible to win on a write-in. So it's a waste of time. It takes it. What really? Don't get me wrong about Doug Mastriano. I supported Doug the last go around. I think Doug had some good ideas. But the other thing about Doug is that Doug proved to us that he does not know how to run a statewide general election. He's just he's not up to the task. Doug traveled around the state in a bus. and talked to the echo chamber. He visited with all the people that were already on board, and he did not spend time convincing people that weren't on board to vote for him. And he didn't talk to the media. Doug cannot win a statewide
Yep.
election, period. To your point about it taking fundraising opportunities away because we're busy spending money fighting Doug and busy with that as opposed to doing fundraising. I agree with that. Right now, the singular focus has to be on winning the governor's race. And in order to win that governor's race, we've got to turn the vote out. So really, the singular focus becomes get the vote turned out. Now, I get concerned that you've got a lot of people that are very angry at the PA GOP, and rightly so. There's some issues that the PA GOP has, but they're turning their anger into supporting Doug. And I fear that they're going to turn their anger into discouraging people once Doug loses, into discouraging people from showing up at the polls. And that would be a horrendous mistake. So I think that folks need to put the emotion aside and think strategically about how we win, because really, we're at a point where we're facing something that is existential. If the Democrats take both chambers and they take the governorship this time,
Yeah.
it is not something that we will recover from for a very long time. The Democrats will be in charge for a long time, and you will not like what you get out of that. Trust me.
Mhm.
So that's my take on that, Steve.
Yeah, it's sadly it's become that way. I mean, and it was the whole thing with the PA GOP chair back when Rothman was elected, and that's where it all started. A lot of people wanted Ted, and then Ted dropped out, and then you had
Bill
Bill,
Backenberg.
what I forget what his name, Backenberg.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bill Backenberg, and a lot of people wanted him, and he didn't make it. And now it's become like the PAGP's establishment. But there are grassroots people in the PAGOP. Yes, I mean, and that's why we are here to represent the state of Pennsylvania, to represent your precinct in the district of where you live. And, if you don't like that candidate, tell us and we'll put up somebody, and we'll circulate those petitions. But we don't hear from anybody until it's too late. And I get the early endorsement, but when you look at it, I mean, where were these people complaining when we early endorsed Dave McCormick back in 2024? People weren't complaining then. They wanted him to win, and they wanted Bob Casey out. Now it's like, oh, all of a sudden, Stacey Garrity got endorsed, back in early, like last February or spring. We can't have that to the establishment and so forth. But where were you before? Like, this was never happening in 2024.
Yeah, my personal opinion is a bit more nuanced on that. I've strongly come against early endorsements for the reason that we have constituents that believe that we don't care what they say. Whenever we early endorse, that reinforces that thought. And so I still think we need to do endorsements, perhaps a little bit later, but that's neither here nor there. The situation that we face in right now with this existential threat trumps everything else. We need to unify. Behind the goal of getting Republicans out and getting these people elected this time. Otherwise, it's all over and it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so it's every second that that we waste on this little tribal conflicts, it takes away from the focus that we have, and it divides us more. And so people, I think, need to put on their big boy pants and their big girl skirts or pants or whatever they call those, and look at this thing objectively, and look at it strategically, and figure out how we're going to win and how we're going to survive.
Yeah. And the thing that I mean, I get that. I get that people don't want Stacey Garrity, but when you look at the 2024 outcome, she almost beat Trump in votes in the 2024 election with the biggest
Mm-hmm.
statewide office with like 3.5 million votes.
You could
Um, Doug
you could
Doug
spend
didn't vote
day
at
and
all.
night. You could spend day and night, promoting Doug Mastriano, and he's not going to win. And it's
Right.
and all that you're doing is causing a lot of divisiveness. He doesn't stand a chance. Stacey's a good candidate and does stand a chance if we work with her. You know, so really, what your choices are is do you want Josh Shapiro, who campaigns as a moderate, but he's anything but a moderate in the way that in his policy. He's closer to the Marxist end of the spectrum, than he is to being a moderate. And do you want 4 more years of that, or do you want to change? So Stacey had shown uh, that she's able to do some conservative stuff when she's in an office, and I haven't seen her doing any left wing stuff. So yeah, you might not like her. Yeah, you may be upset about the endorsement. Get over it. Get over it. And
Yeah. Exactly.
because
Um,
otherwise you're going to spite your
yeah.
spite your you're going to cut your nose off to spite your face.
Yep. And then you're going to regret because you didn't pull together with everybody else, and Shapiro is back in.
Yep.
And then what? Then you're left by yourself because that's the decision you made.
Yeah, and
Um,
you're in a situation where those 2A rates that you love, they're going to be gone. They're going to be diminished.
yeah,
All of the promise that you have
just like what.
with energy policy and with jobs, that are going to be created out of that. If the left takes over, that's not going to happen. Pennsylvania could either become the leader in those areas and be rewarded economically and have a bright future for our children, because they'll be able to, have careers that are good paying, or you could eliminate all that and guarantee a miserable future for the children.
Mm-hmm. So I'm a school board director for my district, and one of the things, as soon as I got, even before I got in there, was our budget, and because Josh Shapiro's get stuff done slogan really didn't get stuff done. It was like 3 months late with the budget impasse, and that didn't help with with school districts all around the state. I mean, it we had to wait to spend stuff until it was passed. And what better person could you have in office that knows the money, that knows the state money, has given back millions of unacclaimed property in Pennsylvania to residents than Stacey Garrity? I mean, it's the perfect candidate to all around, and people complaining right now about gas prices. Well, the state of Pennsylvania is up to the governor, and I'm sure when it comes to it, when we have time, we'll have lower gas prices with Stacey Garrity.
I,
Um,
I think, is it true that we have the highest gas tax in the nation, or are we number two or number one? I think we're one of those slots. It's a ridiculous
uh,
amount. It's something like 80 cents a gallon. Don't quote me on the number, but it's somewhere in that ballpark. Yeah, that's
yeah,
80 cents out of every gallon. Just think of that. It's crazy.
it is crazy. But yeah, I mean, Doug Mastriano, like I said, Doug Mastriano is a state senate, so he really doesn't know much about running the whole state. Only I guess, his district, I guess you want to call it, where Stacey Garrity has been an actual state treasurer, knows all the state money, knows how to run a state campaign, and knows how to run a state. Well, at least we're hoping at this time. And it's more, and so because that's one of the objections I have gotten. What does Stacey Garrity what does Stacey Garrity know how to run a state treasurer that Doug Mastriano doesn't? Well, obviously she knows more than Doug because Doug is a district senator,
Mm-hmm.
and he showed that he couldn't run a state campaign when Stacey Garrity has been in it since 2021, I think it was, or 2020, and has the experience of running the state money and everything. So to me, it's more qualified than Doug at this point. And so that is like some of the stuff I'm getting. And also the whole Israel bonds that she's paid Israel money to. And like, what's wrong with that? We support Israel. Republicans support Israel. Republicans support Israel.
Yeah, I see that as kind of a non-issue myself, but not everyone views it that way. But again, what people need to do is look at what's most important and what the highest priority things are, and you're going to get those with Jason and Stacey. If you support that, you're going to get that if you turn out and vote. Don't turn out and vote. You're going to get bad things. Don't vote for Stacey and Jason. You're going to end up with Shapiro. It's real simple. I get a little bit confused about understanding why people aren't seeing that.
Right. So let's talk about the grassroots here, since we also have time to talk about the state committee seats and the precinct seats. A lot of people. I always say that the precinct seat is the most powerful office in the country. It technically is when it comes down to it, because we elect every single person. Well, we help get every single person onto the ballot that is to be elected, from federal to national to county to school board to your local municipal people. Without us, none of the candidates wouldn't be able to be on the ballot if we didn't circulate petitions and didn't get their endorsements as well. And we represent every single constituent or voter, Republican voter in this case, in our county, our precinct, and state, and the county in 67 counties for a state committee. How important do you think this position is compared to any other?
I had something in Butler County that we formed last year called the Local Governance Task Force. And the most important positions that we have are local ones, because local ones are what we have the most influence over. I'm talking about school districts. I'm talking about municipalities. And I think what you're asking me specifically about are the state committee or the county committee seats, the precinct seats. And I don't think that there's anything more important to that. And I don't think there's anyone that's more effective than whenever you have an engaged person on one of those seats. And that's the key. They need to be an engaged person. One of the problems that we have are that we have a couple of problems with recruiting those. No one knows what the committees are. Whenever I say no one, most people don't even know that the committees exist. And so that's a problem. We need to educate the community the fact that these positions are there, and number two, we need to make them understand why they're important. Essentially, your precinct committee person, they own their precinct. They're responsible for driving the agenda there. They are responsible for recruiting local people. They're responsible for understanding the local issues. They're responsible for getting other people who won't necessarily be committeemen, but are going to help conservatives, work to win election and to change policies. And that all, if you're looking at making a difference on the state or national stage, that's a daunting task. If you're looking at making a change locally, that's doable. You can make a change on your school district by showing up at the meetings, by understanding the issues, by whenever you see something that needs to change, by getting other people in your community that you know aware of the situation and involved, getting them to show up. It's just it's tremendously important. Um, Other things that the committee people do are you know besides recruiting candidates for these local jobs, is that they're just part of the election apparatus. You know, they can help get people elected by passing out literature, by making phone calls. Um, and a real important thing, it's still important even though we have mail-in voting, is getting your polling place well staffed on election day. In other words, getting the proper coverage on it, so that you have somebody that shows up there that has literature and that is willing to engage voters as they come in, because a lot of voters will come in, and like in this election cycle, there's another very important seat that's on the election, and that's the state committee representative, the state committee members, and that's very important, and nobody even knows that there's a PAGOP. I mean, if you ask 10 people, 9 of them never even heard of it, even though they might have checked the box on a ballot before. They didn't know what it was, and they don't remember it as soon as they walk out of the election. So it's an opportunity to people will show up at the polls. They won't know who to vote for. It's an opportunity to give them some guidance, and to have poll cards, and there's a whole art of doing that, of working the polls, that we could discuss down the road if we have time here. But yeah, that's the precinct person just owns that area, if they do it right, and they can be a tremendous influence in their community, on school boards, on municipalities, up even into the state representative level. So does that make sense, Steve?
Yeah, that makes sense a lot. And I agree with you. We certainly do have a problem with informing our constituents, our voters, our people, what a precinct committeeman is or state committeeman is, to get them involved in running in an election, or getting them a point. They just look at you weird when you tell them what it is, or if you ever heard of it. And that is just because we're not doing a good enough job, passing the knowledge forward, or informing them, hey, this is on your ballot, or you can do this to get involved in your GOP or in your county or whatever. So yeah, it's definitely been a struggle. I know we've lost a lot after this election. A lot of seats have been given up. Hopefully we're getting some back in the election here shortly, but it's just a struggle to even recruit people, because they don't know what it is, or they don't want to take 3 hours of their time to knock a few doors, or to get 10 signatures on a petition to be on the ballot, or even just to hand out their name on a piece of paper to at least 10 people to get the door right in for a precinct.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be a lot more for state committee, because that's like 100 and some, but I'm sure it'd be even easier if you have the email list of like all the people in your neighborhood or whatever. You can at least do 100 emails to people, say, hey, or now with Facebook, you can just like post it up.
Mm-hmm.
My name for the committee.
Right.
So,
yeah, I'll tell you, the first time that I ran, I didn't intend to run. Okay, but I walked into the poll. Okay, and I was filling it out, and like I just mentioned, I came across this thing called a county committee member, and there was a male and a female that you could fill in. And I'm like, I didn't know there was one of this, but ours is blank. I said, well, I'll tell you what, maybe I'll step up. So I wrote my name in. Okay, and so I walked out of the polls, and back then they didn't have they didn't have a minimum. Now you need 10 votes in order to get it, but back then pretty much if you had one, you could get it. So I walked out, and my campaign began as soon as I stepped out of the polls. And it was a feverish 10-minute campaign. I called a bunch of neighbors that I'd noticed hadn't voted yet, and said, "Hey, write me in for this slot." And that was it. That was my campaign. And
Easy.
yeah. About a month later, or I got a call, and they said, "Hey, I see that you did a write-in campaign. Congratulations, you're elected." So, and much to the chagrin of the parties, that I became involved. But the other, I'm going to say something that's a little bit controversial. But another role that having good committee people, or another benefit of having good committee people, is that they provide a check and balance on the people that run your county's committee. Because you've got people that are paying attention to what's going on. And in some counties, everybody does real good work, and they're in it for the right reasons. In some other counties, it's a good old boys club. And you got a handful of people at the top of the organization who are basically the kingmakers. And you don't want kingmakers. And so the way you avoid having kingmakers is you have a bunch of little knights out in all these precincts, that won't tolerate it.
Yeah. Technically, it's the voters vote on us, and then we vote on the county committee leaders, and then the county committee leaders vote on the state committee leaders, and the state committee leaders vote on the RNC leaders. It's real political power.
Yeah, and it should work as you described it. It should be it should work as a republic or as a representative form of government. And sometimes we fail, and whenever we fail, that's when those knights who are in the precincts, it's up to them, to take the challenge up and right the wrongs. So
yeah.
And so,
I mean, so like that. I mean, that's the best way to get involved, really, in your county and in the GOP. If you really want, good leadership in the committee and the state committees and the RNC. I mean, get involved. Getting involved in your precinct and your local GOP party and state GOP party to keep, those leaders and vote on those leaders that you want and those candidates that you want to put up. I mean, but it practically, like, a lot of I hear it a lot of times. It's what is it? Oh, there was a guy on Facebook earlier today was like, "Oh, well, Stacey Garrity is leading in the poll or is losing in the polls by 2 points or by 22 points." I'm like, dude, polls don't count to me. It's people that want to answer their phone at home. Doors win wars.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, the other thing about polls is most polls have an agenda behind them. They'll determine what they want to prove in the poll. And then the methodology they use will, pretty much guarantee that whatever the poll will come out with supports that. A lot of polls that they have are designed to discourage voters. And I suspect I know exactly what you're talking about, with the person that brought that 20-some% being down in the polls for Stacey Garrity. And I guarantee you that poll was designed to discourage, Republican voters. And I bet that whenever they picked the population that they were polling, that they did it with who they were deeming to be likely voters. And it would end up skewing more heavily towards the Democratic side of the House. But you know what? I'm involved in an effort, and I'm getting other people involved in it, and we're going to right that wrong. We're going to get that word out, and we're going to make sure that people know that they need to, why they need to show up. It's going to be crystal clear. We're going to be broken records. People are going to get tired of hearing it, but they need to hear it. So, but yeah, the poll.
Yep. The one I always go back to. The one I always go back to is to 2016, where they said Hillary was going to beat Trump in a poll, and what happened? Trump won, right? I mean, the only polls I care about are exit polls.
Yeah,
That's all I care about.
On the race you're talking about in 2016, there were all those polls out, and I was at, like I don't usually pay much attention to them, but there was so much noise with it that I started to think that Trump didn't have a chance. 2 days before election, I decided to take a ride up to Rural King. Had never been to Rural King in Butler County. I don't know if you know what Rural Kings are, but they're like the redneck Walmart. Great places, you know. Uh, and so instead of driving the interstate, for some reason, I don't know why I did this. I decided to drive through country roads. And as I drove on those roads, every farm, every business, every house had a Trump flag on it. And I got back from that trip and told my wife, I said, you're not going to believe this, but Trump's going to win. And the reason that he's going to win is because he just has this massive populist support everywhere. Because and I found out, I made some calls to other people, and they say, "Oh yeah, his signs are up all over the place." And sure enough, he did the unthinkable. Nobody was thinking he was going to beat Hillary, and he did.
No.
And the rest is history.
Yeah. And that, I mean, that, like I said, doors win wars in this case, not polls. I mean, sure, polls are, like you said, are to discourage people and people that are home that want to answer the phone. Nowadays, most people don't want to answer the phone because they know who's calling. If you get a call from the NRCC or if you get a call from the RNC, it's either they want a donation or it's a poll, and they ain't going to answer. You can lay a piece of literature out on the person's door, and at least they'll get it, and hopefully go out and vote. Or you can get, do a survey, who you're voting for, or whatnot, or do the Pulsar app or whatever, which is better because that ballot goes to the GOP. But at least they'll show you who's showing up to the polling place to vote that day.
Here's something that you can do as a committee person. If you want to promote someone locally, you can do it very cost effectively. Do a social media post and have all your friends share it. Tell them to go to this. Just have a little list of emails on people that are willing to help you promote stuff. And all that they need to do is you provide the link to the post on them. Say, go to this link, like it, comment on it, and share it with your feed so that all of your friends see it. And you can go geometric pretty quickly on that, and a lot of eyeballs will get on it. Another thing is not everyone is going to want to do this, but if you're serious about it, you can get boosting capabilities turned on in Facebook, and for a pretty low price, you can target an area to boost your posts so that all the eyeballs in that area, like I've got one running right now in Butler County, and it's about the state committee, and I'm running it for a couple of weeks at $5 a day, and I've got the last time I checked was a couple of days ago, and I had I don't know 6,000 or 7,000 views. So there's some text right above the video. So there are 6,000 or 7,000 people that saw that text, and there's like another 1,200 of them that actually click through, and it tells you how many click through and listen to a substantial part of the video. And there's like 1,200 of them, and we're talking at $5 a day, so it doesn't have to be expensive. But like I said, you can do it at no cost to you. If you are diligent.
Oh yeah.
Hold a list of friends, get them to agree to share.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have a list of just Republican voters in my township that I'm in charge of, or my precinct, or should I say. And I always put out a sample ballot of who I think you should vote for, and a lot of people at the polls are like, "Thank you for the sample ballot," or "I brought my sample ballot," or whatnot. Or I send out a PDF of candidates or whatever, like their flyers or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and they can look through that. But yeah, I mean, I mean, it works. I mean, I haven't seen more people more prepared to come in to vote than when I send out emails like that. Because
Yeah.
because I'm sure you've been around long enough when the was it the old newspapers would come with sample ballots or the League of Women Voters would send it out or whatever. Now they don't get that anymore. Nope, none of us get that anymore. So I figured, I got the emails. Why not send out the sample ballot with all the candidates and whatnot? They don't necessarily have to vote that way, but if you want to win, you vote that way. Um, and they always thank me, or they ask me, or they hear about some people hear about it, and we're like, how can we get on this list? And we're like, I'll carry a notepad and say, here, write down your email, and I'll send it to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
it's another idea that I've had that I think would be workable in a lot of locations, especially where you have larger retired communities. Yeah, every time I stop by my rep's office, to talk to her, yeah, I noticed that there would be some people out in the waiting room that didn't necessarily have meetings. These were older people that came out and they had time on their hands, and their kids were grown up and lived somewhere else, and they they were interested in what was happening in this country, and they were interested in politics. You know, and they would be candidates for people that you could recruit for certain tasks to help you get the word out on things. Because they had the time and they had the interest. So
mhm.
I would say even if you were a precinct person, maybe set up a coffee once a month. Somewhere on a Saturday or something like that. Just have a standing thing and invite some of these folks. Get them engaged. It's we need more warriors, and they don't necessarily have to have a committee slot. I know a lot of committees, they want to keep everything within the committee, and I think that that's the wrong approach. I think that what we need to do is any person that is a conservative Republican uh, and has some passion, we need to tap into that passion.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Get
yeah,
some grassroots moving.
absolutely.
We
Yeah.
used to have we used to have a group called York 3PA, and they used to have meetings like um, every Monday or so, and then kind of fell apart because people weren't interested, and then they were trying to make it a what do they call it? It was a free. It was a free group at one time, but they wanted to make it to where it was a private, I guess, a private membership where you paid a private membership fee, a PMA, I guess you call it.
Hmm.
Um, and and then that didn't fall through, and then people just kind of fizzled out and not really involved in it anymore.
Hmm.
Um, so, but they did start up a Turning Point USA group here in York somewhere. So hopefully that sparks some interest and get some um, movement going here in
Yeah.
York.
If
Um,
you, as a precinct person, if you want to, you should be a servant leader as well. And one thing that I would recommend that people do is that they get involved with some other groups just besides their local committee. Not necessarily they don't need to do a lot of work with them, but just establish the relationships. And then as you get people that you've identified in your area that you think can help the conservative cause, match them up with what their passions are. So it's not a loss if you recruit them and they end up not working as closely with your group as with other groups that are still promoting conservative values and agendas. Um, we're all better off. The more people that we have, rowing in the same direction and contributing. And
yeah,
so it's. I think we need to think out of the box a little bit about that, but also, just apply some of those tried and true principles like some servant leadership into helping these people get what they want, and thus causing them to get engaged and want to stay engaged. Yeah, because they're doing
Yeah,
something,
definitely.
because they're involved with some issue they're passionate about.
Right. And it's going to increase the voter turnout in every election when we get them involved and engaged.
Hmm.
Because right now I'm seeing, we have very low primary turnout in
Absolutely.
almost every single election, unless Trump did it. And so, I are I'm part of the Young Republicans in York County, and
Mhm.
the captain, our chair sends out a sit rep every month, and with all the voter stats, all the Republican districts and voters and stuff like that, and it just keeps dwindling and dwindling on the Republican side and Democrat side, because now more Democrats and Republicans are now switching to independent.
Yeah.
And the more as we get closer to the election, I'm like, how's this gonna end for us? I mean, because we're either gonna lose in the primary now, or are we gonna be kick it back up in the general because of the independents, or which way are the independents leaning? Because you can have independent Republicans, or you can have independent Democrats, and so which way are they going?
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's stressful watching it, but it's also dangerous, like, for Pennsylvania.
Yeah, losing is just not an option. We've got this republic that was gifted to us, by these men that put everything on the line for it. Their reputations, they put their fortunes on the line for it. They put their very lives on the line for it. And so there's a debt that we owe them for that, and that is that we need to keep this going and pass it on to the next generation. We also owe that to everybody who's ever put a
Yeah.
uniform on, or in any other way has served this nation to preserve it. We owe it to our children so that they can have a nation that they grow up in which they experience the freedoms that we had. And quite frankly, we owe it to ourselves to keep it going. And so now is the time to move heaven and earth to make sure that this doesn't go off the rails. Yeah. Yeah, so that's the way I see it.
Yep. We
Yeah.
definitely owe it to those men.
Yeah. So
Because those men and women that put on a uniform, definitely, they fought for our rights to even vote. They fought for our rights to even get involved in politics, to run for office, because they're keeping our freedom here in America.
yeah, I mean, you can say what you want, about the wars that we've been involved in. You either agree or disagree with them, but these people's willingness to defend America at all costs can't be questioned, and it's got to be respected, and we owe them something. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So
And that's where I always tell people, that 3 hours of 3 hours of your time worth your freedom to, door knock doors, or get your name on a ballot to run for office, to keep this republic going. And that's all it really takes is 3 hours a day. You can knock 3 out, and get a good turnout, 3 hours each day, and fill up your petition, or fill out a petition for a candidate.
yeah, there's that, and even but there's so many different things that people can do. It's granted door knocking is probably about the most important thing that you can do, but it's not the only thing. And some people aren't suited to it. They're and so they can make phone calls, they can write letters. Write a letter to your neighbors. Explain what's going on. Explain who the candidates are.
Right.
Encourage
It
them
can
to
be
go out and vote.
very scared.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just whatever the person can contribute it. Now, the one thing that we didn't talk a lot about is the state committee race,
Yep.
and I have some opinions on that. That again, some people may find a bit controversial, but I think that
Yeah, go ahead.
the state committee has an issue. Okay, there's a lack of trust in the state committee. There's a perception that the state committee executives go into a back room they decide who the candidates are going to be, and then they cram those candidates down everyone's throats. Okay, and that's a real problem, that there is that perception, and that it causes people to decide that they want to vote, that they don't want to vote, that it doesn't matter. And I think that those criticisms are fair to a large degree. And I question the composition of the committee. And the question I'll throw out there: is it appropriate that you have politicians, that you have politician staff members, that you have people who make money consulting with either the GOP or with state government, or you have lobbyists on the state committee affecting decisions that the state committee makes in terms of what candidates we should support? I think, to me, that seems like that's a conflict of interest. And I think that some of the perception problems that we have stem from that. And so personally, what I'm telling people is that they should, in making their selections for state committee candidates, they should really be looking at people that don't have those conflicts of interest. That's who you want serving on your committee. You can counter that, Steve, if you like, or whatever. I'm throwing it out as my opinion, and I think it's a legitimate one. I think it's a legitimate concern.
Yeah, it definitely is. Because I remember when I first heard that Greg Ruffin was running, and the other two that were running, I was like, why is a state senator running for GOP chairman? That seems to be a conflict of interest to me. So I don't understand that. There's even legislators in the state committee running as state committeeman. I know my legislator, Kate Klunk, is in the state committee. She's been in the state committee. I think that's a huge, also conflict of interest to me, to some degree. And even in committees, we have like, I know one state representative who has her staff, or has his staff, his chief of staff, I guess you call it, as a committee person. That seems, it's the second time in a row that I've heard it, because of John Popovich, who used to be Seth Grove's chief of staff, used to be in the state committee back when I was still in the state committee. And now this one, Mike Jones, his chief of staff, is in the county committee. It's like, where does the line draw where you bring in people that you hired to be your chief of staff in these committees? And how is it? Because I reached out to John Popovich in the county committee for help for a person down in, I think it was Adams County, in the last sheriff's election or whatever. He's like, "Oh, I can't help you because I'm also chief of staff." I'm like, then why are you in the committee? Yeah. It's like, okay, you're filling the seat, but you can't do anything. So either step aside and let somebody else fill that seat in that precinct.
That's just it. We've got politicians here that are on the state committee, and we've got a guy that consults that's on the committee, and we've got staff members. And as far as the politicians are concerned, some of them I strongly support in the role that they're in the elected role that they're in. I don't think that they're necessarily bad people, but why would we want them in a situation where they're going to be subject to conflict of interest, where it affects how they earn their living, and expect them, not to succumb to that conflict of interest via pressure, to vote certain ways on things. It's just human nature to do that. Very few people would be able to resist that. So why even allow the situation to happen in the first place? It's kind of a peeve that I have. And that's, I've been very outspoken about that, and I'm sure you know that doesn't make me popular with everyone that's on the state committee, particularly some of the leaders. but, but I don't think they're bad people. I think they're putting themselves in a bad situation. And we end up with,
I did hear.
Huh?
Right.
So we end up with,
I did hear Greg Roth.
What's that?
Okay.
Okay, so we end up with situations like we did.
I did hear Greg Rothman say back in
I'm sorry, you broke up, Steve. I didn't hear that last thing. Yeah, I can hear you now.
I was going to say I did hear Greg Rothman say that that the county committee or the precinct people are the ones that do most of the work, and that was when they had finally decided to endorse Stacey Garrity, or they were deciding to it, and so that kind of made me feel a little bit better knowing that it's not just that it's that the lower level is doing all the work, where kind of the state GOP is the administrative level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've spoken with Greg about some of the problems that I just brought out, regarding where we stand in terms of getting voters to engage, and he's been supportive. I'm getting an effort kicked off the ground to come up with a plan on how we address that, and he's been supportive of that. So I applaud the chairman for that. Yeah, it's there was another point that I had in there, but it kind of got lost. So I'm sure it'll come to me.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and so we got another. I think they're every 2 years that the chair is up or something like that.
I believe you are correct. Yes.
So we got another year or so before the next one comes up, and whoever that's going to be, unless Greg's going to run again, they'll be the incumbent. But she seems to be doing pretty well for what he's doing. Other than I don't know if this was his fault or all of our thoughts, but the Lancaster legislative district, I think it was like 36, like right after the 2023 election, and what's his name was supposed to be the Republican candidate. I forget what his name was. But he, I've heard it like back then, like, oh, the PA GOP dropped the ball on this one, or we didn't do anything, during the special election of that or whatever. So
I think there's a lot of blame to go around on that one.
Yeah. First of all, I've heard this from Russ Diamond. I don't know if you know Russ Diamond or not. He's in Lebanon County, but
I know of what Russ Diamond. I've met him one time, but
he said that the candidate is. He said that he told me, the endorsement is only as good as the candidate is. You can endorse a candidate, but if he's not going to be out there campaigning, he's not going to win the voters over by his platform, then the endorsement fails and the candidate fails. And that's what happened in the legislative district of 36. That whoever the guy's name was, he wasn't out there publicly. He didn't hold any fundraising events. He didn't hold any rallies. He didn't go door to door with anybody. He expected the GOP and Scott Presler to door knock for him with without any presence. And I think that's where the ball was dropped.
That's consistent with what I've heard.
On him.
That is consistent with what I've heard, Steve.
And then everybody knew. And what everybody knew was that Democrats were pouring millions of dollars into the candidate, into their candidate, and they won.
Yeah.
So.
And I would expect that to happen
just
more and more.
Show you that not always grassroots effort goes that way.
So, hey, Steve, we've got a little bit of a video lag here, so I apologize if I've been trying to talk
Yeah,
over you because
I think so too.
I
And
thought
I
that you
think
were
that's
paused.
exactly.
Okay. All right.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. So I was
I'm
just
on
saying that
post.
there's a bit of a video lag, so I'm having a little bit of trouble figuring out when the right time is to jump in and speak. So I apologize if I've been jumping over you because my video stops and I think you're done talking, and then I start
Oh,
talking.
no.
So apologies for that. Um, yeah. The and once again, I had a point on the tip of my tongue that I was ready to make, and it is. Oh, I know what it was. Okay, so another thing that I think that we should rethink is that we need to get back to this notion that representatives serve the people, not the other way around, and that because you've been elected one time, it does not entitle you to be a representative for the rest of your life. Now, what I'm not saying is that we should primary someone just because they disagree with one thing on you. But I do think that the committee should play a role as doing a sanity check. That if you have someone who is consistently not not voting in the best interest of the people, I think it is incumbent that the committee find someone who's going to get the job done and do it right. And that's kind of a little departure from the way that a lot of people look at things. But I don't think that the founding fathers intended there to be people in these positions for careers. If you go back to their time, they thought that it was a brief service that you provided to the country or to your state or to your locality,
Right.
and then you went back on the farm. You went back to your law firm or you went back to your printing business or whatever it is you did for a living. Um, and this notion that if you get elected once, that you should for the next 30
Yeah,
years.
part-time legislator.
Yeah, I think you need to. I think that we should expect that our politicians are going to be singing for their dinner. And we should hold their feet to the fire on things. And again, there's a balance on that. You don't want to primary someone every time. That you have like a single disagreement with them, because a lot of times we don't really understand the trade-offs that have to be made. Most people don't. In the state, there is like another side of the fence. There's the Democrats, and you do need to make compromises, and you're not going to get everything that you want. And so be cognizant of that, and be aware of the struggle that representatives have in trying to get good things done. That sometimes they're going to need to go along with things that we don't want, but that's just kind of nature. It's like if you're in a professional type of negotiation, what's a good deal? A good deal is one where neither party walks away completely satisfied. Yeah, because you both had to give something up.
There, I mean, we could primary. It's a challenge to primary the next person out for sure. Find somebody to run for a state legislative job, especially when the person that's already been in business has a big enough name to win again.
Yeah. 92% of the time, the incumbent's going to win. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 92% of the time.
Yeah, especially this big name like Kate.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
I mean, it's a challenge, and it can be done, but it's going to take a whole district committee to door knock those voters to flip that vote to beat the incumbent.
I think it should be hard. I mean, it's a good thing that it's hard because you don't want to willy-nilly do that, because you're always going to have one small group of people that don't agree with any politician on one issue, and you don't primary somebody over one issue. You primary them over a sustained pattern of bad behavior.
No.
Yep.
Right. And sometimes that can be done by a censure as well. If they're up for endorsement or at a committee meeting, they can censure somebody
Sure.
if they had bad behavior.
Sure. Hey, going back to what we talked
So
about
yeah,
before.
so we're almost out of time. To end it.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, before we sign off,
Sorry?
I wanted to point out one thing that I think there's a book that I think people should read.
Yeah, sure.
I'm going to hold it up to this camera and hopefully people can see it. So I'll hold it up there for a second. It's You Gotta Win Pennsylvania. This book released last Monday. It was written by Matt Brule, who's with the Commonwealth Partners. Okay. And what it does is it lays out some of the things that I just talked about. So I had started down this path of, we've got to, get the vote out for Republicans. And then I opened this book up and it takes what I was saying and expands it. I talked about the existential problem that we're facing right now with Pennsylvania. He takes it a step further and says Pennsylvania falls, so does the country. That's how important this election is. This book is available on Amazon. Once again, it's called You Gotta Win Pennsylvania. The author's name is spelled there, Matt Brule. Okay. It's not, I think he's got it in paper book and hardcover. I would encourage everyone that's interested in this to get a copy of this book and read it. It's very good and spells out things well. And it talks about the role that the entrepreneurs in this country can play in helping to save our republic and to save the Commonwealth. And that's pretty much, I think we've covered what we intended to.
Yeah.
Well, Steve,
Right. So just to, and I've heard this many times that, sorry, I heard this many times that, and I'm sure you have too, that the keystone is not just a name. It's actually what wins most of our elections, what wins most of the state. When Pennsylvania is won, everybody follows. And so, I mean, this is the state where liberty and freedom was designed and created, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and many of our freedom fighters fought here in the Gettysburg War. And so when everybody's watching on election day, they're watching for Pennsylvania because everybody follows.
Absolutely. The parting thought that I have is let's all work together and let's save this republic that it was gifted to us by great men.
Yep. Well, thank you for your time, Chet. Where can they find you?
You can find me on Facebook my page is called Chet.Jack, so it's facebook.com/Chet.Jack is a good place to find me. I post quite frequently. Give me a follow, get the algorithms up there so I can get my message out a little bit wider, because I want to convince people to get out there and vote.
Right. Well, thank you for your time, Chet.
Excellent. Steve, it's been a pleasure. It's good reconnecting with you. And I'm going to bother you about convention of states because we need some of your energy back in that too. So, all right. You take care.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.